Marc Guehi, player in the Premier League. I suppose that over in the Premier League, it was some LGBT initiative, sort of co-sponsored thing where players were wearing rainbow armbands to show their support for LGBT issues. And Marc Guehi here, this player, captain of his team, wrote, I love Jesus and Jesus loves you on his LGBT armband, and has come under an intense amount of criticism for being transphobic, bigoted, and all of the things that get said about somebody when they do something like this. Ron, there was also a team captain of, this probably all makes sense to you, but the team captain of Ipswich.
Oh, right.
You know all about
Tractor
Ipswich?
Boys. Yeah, the Tractor Boys.
All right. Well, the Tractor Boys captain is a Muslim, and he elected not to wear the rainbow armband altogether. And there doesn't seem to be a lot that's being said about that. I believe the league said that they viewed that as a matter between the player and the team. But doing any sort of religious thing is apparently barred by the rules of the Premier League, as I gather it. And so because he wrote this on his armband, he's now being criticized, and it's also being taken personally by members of the LGBT community who, you know, feel that he did this as some sort of act of defiance against their cause.
Yeah, sports teams should not make their players wear rainbow paraphernalia. If they want to have an LBGTQ plus whatever days at their stadium, if they want to put up banners, that's fine. But you cannot make a player. I don't think you should make a player wear that. Like, it's just. I stand with both of the guys, the guy with Ipswich and this guy. Like, you told him to wear that, so he said, "Okay, I'll show you," and he's allowed to believe what he wants to believe. It's Ronnie T-shirt's take.
Well, I tend to agree with you. You know, we had the hockey player here some time ago. I can't remember his name, who didn't
for the Philadelphia
want to participate. Maybe? Yeah, I don't remember, but I do remember it occurring. And look, I mean, you know, some people argue that this whole LGBT movement is kind of a secular religion of sorts. And I just think anything that is political, look, I'm all in favor of anybody using their platform to speak out about their political beliefs or their beliefs about any cultural matter or so forth. But I'm not sure that type of evangelizing, whether it's about actual religion or whether it's about secular causes that reasonable people can disagree on, I just don't think it's a good look to tell an athlete that they have to use a particular piece of equipment or that they have to wear something on their uniform that might go against their belief system. I don't think anybody should be forced to do that. I don't think that if you're an atheist or whatever, you should have to wear a Jesus armband either, for that matter, right? I think it's best to just leave this stuff out of sports entirely. But if the man wants to say that, if he wants to put that message on his armband, then, you know, I think it's as fair for him to be able to give that message as it is for the league to mandate that somebody has to at least imply that they support a cause that they may not. The LPGA Tour and the United States Golf Association have introduced a new policy that effectively bans transgender players from LPGA events as well as USGA events in the world of women's golf. The language saying that players are only eligible to play on the LPGA Tour or in USGA events if they are quote unquote assigned female at birth or transitioned to female before going through male puberty. I'm not sure if we needed to add the second part of that or not, because if you're going through those types of things before you reach the age of puberty, I and many others might argue that that is tantamount to child abuse. But still, a big move here from a major organization attempting to blunt off the possibility of biological males making their way into the world of women's golf. And you can see the language here, the LPGA updating the gender policy for competition eligibility. This is effective next year. Under the new policy, athletes assigned female at birth, that means you're born a biological female, to compete on the Ladies European Tour. It goes beyond just the LPGA, as you can see. If you have gone through male puberty, you are disqualified. The commissioner of the LPGA Tour says our policy is reflective of an extensive science-based and inclusive approach. The policy represents our continued commitment to ensuring that all feel welcome within our organization while preserving the fairness and competitive equity of our elite competitions. This has become an issue that got pushed to the front burner because of a golfer named Haley Davidson. Haley Davidson, a biological male, transitioned to female and began to attempt to qualify for the LPGA Tour. And the concerns immediately evident because this is a biological male with the inherent physical advantages athletically that tend to go with that Y chromosome. And so there you can see Haley Davidson, who will now no longer be able to pursue a dream of playing on the LPGA Tour. And Haley Davidson, as you might imagine, is quite unhappy about that. These new guidelines, Davidson weighing in on Instagram, complaining that silence caused the LPGA and USGA to enact this policy. Can't say I didn't see it coming, says Davidson. All the silence and people wanting to stay neutral. Thanks for absolutely nothing. This happened because of all your silence. So Haley Davidson, nor any other biological male assigned at birth, that just means what you're born as. I don't know about these semantics, but I am a little concerned about the idea that if you transition prior to puberty, now maybe that is the scientific basis, that if you don't go through puberty, you don't end up with the same physical advantages that men have in athletic competition over women. But I don't know. If somebody's transitioning before puberty, I got to question that entire process, because I don't know that any child is in a position to have their body modified chemically or by surgery or both at that age. But still, it represents some progress, I would argue, in the world of sports with how various organizations in various different sports, all of these governing bodies, how are they going to handle this issue of transgender athletes? We've talked about it on this program many times. We've seen what happened at the NCAA level with Leah Thomas. Decent male swimmer, transcendent, competing against women. We've seen it with Blair Fleming and what's been going on at San Jose State University with various opposing schools electing to forfeit and not play against a biological male in women's volleyball competition. So perhaps something as common sense as this, as clarity. What were you when you were born? And that's what's going to determine your eligibility. So credit overall to the LPGA and the USGA for enacting something that I think is a very common sense policy. Haley Davidson transitioned in her 20s. Okay, so we're talking about somebody who was a grown man before electing to change genders, and certainly that is now disqualified per LPGA policy. So we'll keep our eyes on this going forward. I don't know. John Bon Jovi, I mean, what happens if you're just a man who looks like a woman? John Bon Jovi looks like he just rolled in a birdie putt at 18 to win the ShopRite LPGA Classic presented by Acer. I made that up, I think, but it's so close to what a golf tournament name would sound like on the LPGA Tour. I'm not 100% sure. Tim dug that one up. I think that's a fake event. I'm relatively sure that is a fake event. What is not fake is the Supreme Court is currently listening to arguments in the U.S. versus Skrmetti, who is the Attorney General of the great state of Tennessee. Tennessee, among the roughly 24 states or so who have imposed prohibitions on medical treatment of minors related to transgender matters, surgery, puberty blockers, etc., etc. So this has made its way to the Supreme Court, and arguments are being heard. The Department of Justice is arguing that any sort of ban of this nature violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So the case is going on right now. Sonia Sotomayor, one of the three liberal Supreme Court justices, had some, I would say, eyebrow-raising comments that she made about this. Let's take a listen.
Cannot eliminate the risk of detransitioners. So it becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk. Even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm.
How do we feel about that comparison of likening a gender transition surgery? And if you've ever seen, look, don't even Google what these surgeries entail if you have a weak stomach. There are photos out there of where skin is removed from forearms and used to fashion faux genitals and so forth. It's one thing if you're a grown adult, as I've said many times, grown adult, go do whatever it is that you want to do. Live your life. As long as you're not hurting somebody else, go make your decisions. But we're talking about children here. And the 14th Amendment, if you are unaware, talks about there needing to be a compelling reason to treat people differently based upon various classifications, such as race, gender, etc. I would think, I'm not a lawyer, I took a couple of legal classes in college. Shout out to J.D. Drotti, who I took a couple with at Western Kentucky University. I'm going to say that it's a compelling reason because these are children. There's your compelling reason to regulate what happens to their little bodies. It's the same reason we don't let them smoke. It's the same reason that we don't let them drink alcohol. It's the same reason that you can't drive a car. All of these things. There's things that you can't do when you're a child because you're a child. You don't have the cognition yet to do it. You don't have the motor function to do it. You don't have the judgment to know. Most of us my age know. I look back and I think of dumb shit that I did in my 40s and my 30s, in my 20s. Much less how confused I was when I was a kid. And so the stories are many. When we talk about detransitioning, it's a pretty common story. Young people, children who have gone through this process, and then several years later, they don't feel that way anymore, but now their breasts are gone, or they have already undergone a procedure that has crafted them an artificial new set of genitals. Okay, what do you do then? How do you go back? It's not so easy to put the toothpaste back in the tube, and it's a pretty common story that people regret this. So that is part of the matter that is being discussed there. All right, in other news, and I suppose that this will also be the entry point to bring in the international streaming star from Nashville, Tennessee. Right after this video, we're going to go to him, but Charlemagne the God, I still have a hard time taking that seriously. He is actually a pretty reasonable guy by the modern standards of the left. Charlemagne seems like a guy who is searching for truth. Certainly, I don't agree with him on everything, but he seems to be a truth seeker, and I respect that. And he was on The View talking to the international streaming star's favorite person, perhaps, Whoopi Goldberg, and they were discussing the matter of Joe Biden pardoning his son. Let's go to the tape.
But that's not a monolith. We're not, Democrats are not a monolith.
But why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? And why can't Republicans say when Republicans are wrong?
I'll tell you when Democrats are wrong.
So you don't think Joe Biden is wrong?
No, I don't. And can I just point this out to you? The president has a pardon power,
you're ridiculous.
Right?
I didn't say you were ridiculous, Ms. Goldberg.
Yeah,
I would never. I said that. I just think that's
Think about
Come over and give me a
think about it this way.
Ronnie, it's a simple question. Why can't you just admit when a Democrat does something wrong? And he said, same thing on the other side. And I agree with that. This applies to both sides. Why can't you just admit it when somebody does something wrong? Why must we continue to play this game where we excuse everything that someone we agree with does, but we are, our antenna is always up for even the slightest mistake that somebody might make that we don't agree with?
It's really frustrating that we live in a country now where the Democrats are supposed to do exactly what the head of the Democratic Party tells them to do, and the same thing on the Republican side. I would love to think that our elected officials are going to use their brain, use common sense, and make decisions based off of that, not what you're supposed to do because, that's what the Republican handbook says, or that's what the Democratic handbook says. It's really frustrating. I feel like we got a bigger sense of how prevalent that is in these last elections, where we just every day are updating, the scoreboard to see how many people or how many Republicans are in the House. Do they have a majority? Like it kind of feels like it shouldn't matter. It's like, here's something that we're going to talk about. Here's a proposed bill. Here's a proposed something. Let's vote on it using common sense. And that doesn't happen anymore. It's literally, well, I'm a Republican, so I have to vote this way. Even if I don't agree with it, you run the risk of being ostracized. You run the risk of not getting voted back in. It's awful, Ricky. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Oftentimes what happens is people start with what their tribe is. This is the tribe that I belong to. This is my group. And then you take whatever the news is and you just mold it around in your hands like a lump of clay, or possibly Hunter Biden's feces. We still don't know the answer to your question, Ron, whether or not it was sculpting or if he was using it as some type of Bob Ross painting. But you take it and you just massage it around in your hands until you turn it into something that fits whatever the narrative is or the lens through which you see the world. Whoopi Goldberg is just in the tank for the Democrat. I really feel like Joe Biden could do almost anything, and Whoopi Goldberg would find a way to excuse it or to say that it's okay because Trump, whatever it is that they need to go to, you can find a way of getting there if you're willing to tell yourself convenient lies. And when you watch The View, that show is one convenient lie stacked on top of the next, stacked on top of the next. And that's why they're reading legal notes all the time over there.
Well, Ricky, Whoopi would also, if Donald Trump came out today and said, hey, you guys probably don't believe this, but I actually have a little bit of spare time. And in that spare time, I have developed, ready for this? a cure for cancer, Whoopi Goldberg would have a problem with it because Trump came up with it. She just would.
But if an amazing doctor, an amazing oncologist,
they maybe
such as
with
Dr.
a PhD,
Jill Biden
with PhD,
came up with it, yeah, she's the best physician ever to not go to medical school.
Absolutely.
Ron,
so you
take it from Whoopi.
Yeah. So you just brought me in at that point, but you showed the clip of Sotomayor with the Supreme Court. That's exactly the same thing. Like, it's frightening to think that, what do we have, 9 Supreme Court justices, that's her argument. Like, that's her argument. That sounds like it's so, like, that's from the Democratic handbook. Like, this is what I'm supposed to say. It's awful, Ricky.
These are children. These are children. There have been about roughly 10,000 generations of human beings, and obviously culture and things change. Children used to be treated like little adults. They would send them into the fucking coal mine when they were 10 years old, work them like dogs. If you go back and look at the history of childhood, it is a relatively new thing to human civilization that we recognize and understand that children don't think like adults, that children need to have certain allowances and exceptions made for their behavior. We treat them differently because we understand now that kids are kids and they're not miniature adults, that you are there just to help you work on the farm or go out and strip tobacco. My grandmother, she was out stripping tobacco when she was smaller than my youngest daughter. It was a different world. But having said that, Ron, it seems to me to be a very common sense position to say, don't allow a child who we will literally not allow to get a tattoo. Why won't we allow minors to get tattoos? Well, because you're making a relatively permanent change to your body and you're a kid. And maybe tomorrow you'll feel differently, or next week you'll feel differently. Maybe you can't fully recognize and understand the permanence of the word permanent and the concept of permanence. So you don't realize that you're going to be sitting somewhere in a nursing home one day in 80 years with that stupid fucking tattoo that you got or whatever. Well, this is those stakes multiplied, I don't know, 100 times over, Ron, 1,000 times over.
1 billion.
I want my dick back.
Yeah, that's 1 billion.
Well, it's gone. It's gone now. I don't like the way that my body developed. Well, we gave you those puberty blockers when you were 11, and now your body's not ever going to be the same again. Or some of these surgeries get botched, and then people have trouble going to the bathroom for the rest of their life. Can you imagine being a grown adult who struggles with simple tasks such as going to the restroom because when you were 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, your parents, or at least one of your parents in the state of California, if you're a parent, you can have your kids taken away from you for saying the opinion that I'm stating on this show right now, which I believe to be a fundamentally common sense position. Don't allow children to make permanent changes to their bodies that can have debilitating physical harm and psychological harm as well, because they're kids and they're not equipped to do that yet. And where is the history of this? Where were the people who were in this boat in the 1950s, in 1925, during the Civil War, 30 years ago? Why are there so many more people now? I think that a lot of it is it's a social contagion. Gender dysphoria is real. I taught sex and gender classes, I said on this show, Ron, 15 years. I've had a number of transgender students through the years. It's real. It's real and it's rare medically. And I feel sorry for anybody who is experiencing gender dysphoria, because I think it's a difficult thing for somebody to go through and deal with. But I also don't think that we've had an explosion of people with gender dysphoria in the last 5 or 10 years. I think a lot of them are being led along by social trends. I think a lot of them are being led along by peer pressure and looking for acceptance. And sadly, in many cases, by parents who want a transgender child, whether that's for attention, whether that's the virtue signal, whether that's to validate their own worldview or whatever the case might be. So I have no doubt we can only guess what the percentage is, but there is certainly a percentage of these children that are being coerced in some way by the adults in their life or being led to this conclusion at a young age, much too young of an age for them to be speaking for what they want for the next 6 or 7 decades, Ron.
Yeah, Ricky, this is so crazy because, I can give you an example of, I know kids that want to do something and their parents have said, no, you can't do that. Here's an alternative. And that thing is playing tackle football. And I know parents who have said, you do not play tackle football until you're in high school, until your body is ready. Now, in the interim, you can play other sports, you can play flag football, but you're not going to play tackle football until you're in high school. And those kids they want to play tackle football. They want to so desperately. They want to be a tackle football player, but their parents in their best interests have decided, we're going to wait until your body's better developed, and then you can play when you're in high school. It's the same thing with this transgender.
Sean Salisbury, Ron, yesterday on this show, he didn't play tackle football until
Ricky,
he was a freshman in high school.
There is absolutely no reason that a young boy that feels like he's a girl trapped in a boy's body, there's absolutely no reason that boy and that family can have that boy wear dresses, do things that are more girly. And then when they're 18 or 19 or 20, if they still feel that way, then you can go ahead and move forward with this life-changing transition. There's nothing, and I will tell you, I will stand in support of that boy that feels like a girl. If I see anybody bullying her, I will stand up for them.
I agree.
I will stand up for them. Absolutely.
Yes. This is the compassionate position. It's being cast. The left wants to cast this as, oh, it's transphobic, it's bigoted, it's discriminatory. No, it is placing the overall best interest and needs of children first. Children think they want things all the time. They think certain things will be in their best interest. My youngest would love to eat candy morning, noon, and night, Ron. But I know as an adult that that's not in her best interest, right? There are things sometimes that children think that is a phase that they're going through. You're having hormonal changes in your body. You're not sure what you like, maybe. You're not sure how you feel about things. But guess what? Maybe you're not the same person at 15 that you were at 13. And when you're 16, you may not feel like you felt when you're 15. It's a period of rapid change. And we are basically saying, here, let's freeze the picture at this one particular moment and then do something that is not truly reversible, Ron, that can't be walked back. Yeah, you can perform another procedure and go through something to sort of kind of try to get back to where you started, but you can't. And so we are making a terrible mistake. I think in the future, people are going to look back on this generation and they're going to wonder what the fuck was going on with so many adults deciding that somehow it was an act of compassion to let minor children make these changes to their bodies that really cannot be walked back, Ron. I think it's astonishing, and it's one of those things that 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, I think people are going to look back and they're going to wonder what the fuck the people in this generation were possibly thinking, because on its face, just as a matter of simple sense and reason, it seems to me to be profoundly incorrect.
Ricky,
now, And by the way, Ron, hey, there's a picture of you when you were a kid, Ron.
Yep. Well, I was working in the coal mines because we didn't have enough money for basic necessities, and I had to pull my fair share. Hey, man, I want to throw something in here. Imagine if some of the decisions and some of the thoughts and some of the wants and the desires that our kids have when they're teenagers, what if we locked them into that when they were that age? So Tyler wanted to be a doctor. When she was in high school, she had made the decision, I want to go to school to be a doctor. Before she even got to college, she decided, you know what, I don't want to be a doctor. I'm going to do something similar. She started studying biomedical engineering. Well, Tyler's now 5 years into being a salesperson for a consumer products company. So imagine if when she was 15 or 16 years old, and she said, you know what, Dad, I think I'm going to be a doctor. And we said, all right, you're going to be a doctor. And now she's 28 years old. She'd be in her residency right now, probably hating it. But because she made that decision when she was 14, she has to live with it. And now she has to be a doctor the rest of her life. Could you imagine if we applied the same rules to other normal things that we do in our lives?
Ron, if we could just think back to the worldview that either one of us had when we were 12 or 13, can you imagine just having like that etched in concrete, some part of it? And now you got to permanently live with this thing that you thought that maybe you were only going to think for 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or weeks, I don't know. Right. And then that's it. That's your existence now. You got to ride that out. If a kid is 12 years old today and they live to be 90, they're going to live to see the 22nd century, Ron. There's going to be somebody out there in a nursing home in, fucking 2103 still living with the consequences that their crazy ass parent let them cut their breast off when they were 12 years old. And Sotomayor is going to sit there and say, well, aspirin has side effect. I don't know, Ron. Did you see where Charles Barkley and Marc Cuban think that they could make a successful run to the White House together? Let's take a listen to what Chuck and Marc Cuban had to say about this.
Charles can talk to anybody, and put himself in any circumstance and get along with everybody. And I think that's what we need.
Would your feeling on a run for office change if it were, say, a ticket of you and the Chuckster?
We'd win.
Yes, absolutely. We would win running away. No question about it.
Hey, Mark.
I love Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley is one of my favorite Americans because I think Chuck is self-deprecating. I think Chuck is real. I don't agree with him on everything by any means. I agree with him often on things that he says, but I think Charles Barkley is a good guy, and I think Charles Barkley is real. But you got to get a different running mate, Chuck. You're popular. Charles Barkley might have a chance, but you can't handicap yourself with Marc Cuban there. There's no way. He's going to drag that ticket down like an anchor. Although I will say that Charles' foreign policy is very no nonsense. He was from the Donald Trump school of foreign policy before we knew Donald Trump had a philosophy. Buck a rack. Tell us how you really feel. And speaking of basketball, it seems like the Loyola men's basketball team thinks fuck Sister Jean. Ron, first of all, I didn't know she was still alive until I saw this. Take a look.
Right. Yes. I mean,
look at the team leaving. She's trying to get a fist bump. She's 105 years old, Ron.
Ricky,
she's 105.
They
can't even give her some dap. Come on now.
I was reading the comments underneath the tweet that this was posted on, and they were eviscerating Loyola. It's like, I hope that they lose every game. I hope that was honestly, that was so rude. It was so rude. Like, how hard is it to dap when you're going? It's awful. Like,
she's the fucking mascot too. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they don't know who she is. Did everybody like me rubbing my hair there? I thought I was going to get more than 2 seconds.
No, we talked about it.
And I'm doing a fucking shampoo commercial.
No, we talked about
here.
it. We're human beings. Things happen. We got to do stuff. We get itches. It's okay, Ricky. Like,
listen, this is a great thing for product placement. You know, what if like sitting here next to
Head and Shoulders? Why don't you have a Head and Shoulders
just like
endorsement?
I'm saying, listen, we got to get on that. We got to get the OutKick marketing team on this. I am ripe for a shampoo endorsement deal here. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, Ron, I have to. You think this magic just happens by itself? Not fucking likely. The links that I have to go to look like this, it's pretty difficult, Ron. One more here for you before we get to the poll of the day. Did you see where Trevor Lawrence is now likely out for the season after suffering the concussion at the hands of Azeez Al-Shaair of the Houston Texans? And Al-Shaair, here comes a little Angel Reese energy for you, Ron. Al-Shaair said that people don't know his heart or they don't know who he is. And I said, yeah, it's true. I don't know who you are. I'm getting a better idea maybe of who he is because he posted this on social media. I think this is an Instagram post. If you want me to be your villain, I'll be your villain. See you soon. And he's got a middle finger there. Well, okay then. Fuck you, asshole. I'll stop reserving judgment. I prefer my villains to be delightful anyway. Look at that. I like my villains to be a little funny. I don't need disturbing villains. Give me Cesar Romero and Burgess Meredith over these modern, scary-ass villains that we have out there. Dolls and merchandise and all of that.
Figurines?
Look, dolls and figurines are different. They just are. I don't play with dolls. Listen, I'm going to cover Walter's ears again. Walter, don't listen to him. You're not a doll. You're the greatest running back in the history of the NFL. We're not going to talk like that to you. All right. So it's a Barbie doll or something. I don't know if it's technically a Barbie or not, but it's a wicked doll. And on the back of the box, they directed people. You can see here. This is a Mattel product. They directed them to a porn site. Rather, it's supposed to say wickedmovie.com because it turns out, and here's just a little, you heard, you didn't hear it from me, fellas, but apparently wicked.com, it ain't Disney. If
I'm
you
there
know
right
what I'm
now,
saying.
Ricky. I am there right now.
You're
It
going
is
to find
indeed a
some
porn
princesses
site.
there. Yeah, you're going to find some young women there who may be just as lost as Dorothy was, but they're over 18, and let's just say that it's not going to have anything to do with Oz. So now there's like a lawsuit that's coming forward because some mother bought this, and then Ron, are you okay?
I'm just looking at it. I just want to make sure. So,
during our show, look at this. I want the world to know that Ron is looking at porn right now. Don't hold your phone up, for God's sake.
I didn't. It's this side.
Ron, put your phone down.
Side.
Listen, you are one fucking trimmer from canceling both of us. For God's sake, Ron. Yeah. I
wanted to verify.
All right, well.
Do you remember back in the day, whitehouse.com? Because the real site is whitehouse.gov, and people would type in whitehouse.com and it was a porn site.
Dude, there was a teacher at my old school, my old college, who pulled up the White House, because it was whitehouse.gov.
Is real.
And then there was like whitehouse.com, and whitehouse.com.
That was a porn site. Yes.
That was a different administration.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.